All right, we're back on the blog this week with another author for you to meet. And I have Jennifer Chastain here with us this week. Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, Dina, thanks you for having me today.
I'm
Appreciate
thrilled
the
to have
time.
you. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
So, as I always do, I want to just kick things off with you introducing yourself to everybody, telling a little bit about your family, where you live, whatever you want people to know about Jennifer.
Okay, well, where do I start? I'm originally from New York State, so I'm a Yankee transplant. We live in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been here over 40 years, so we moved when
Okay.
I was a teenager. My dad worked for IBM, so they moved the whole plant from New York down here to Charlotte. And this is where I met my husband. So I married a true Southern boy. He's a native Charlottean. Those are few and far between right now. We met in church. I was directing. We used to do a big passion play, at Easter time. So I was directing all that because I have a degree in theater as well,
Oh,
and so I did that for a while, and then he was one of my Roman soldiers. So he said, "Yeah, you just love me because I wear skirt and a makeup."
so
And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, okay."
he has a sense of humor too.
Yeah, yes. So anyway, so we were married. We've been married. It'll be 29 years this November. Um, we weren't blessed with any children. God just didn't see that in our plan. But looking back, you see how God has brought you through different things. And we were able to be host parents to three different international students. Two were Chinese and one was a South Korean student. The last 10 years. They were high school students. I can't imagine, somebody dropping their kid off in a foreign country, giving them to these people who you don't know and say, okay, here you go. They're yours for the year. And you're
I
going,
know.
okay, it was challenging. It was crazy. It really stretched you as a person, and not having, like I said, not having children to begin with. We got them in the hormonal teenage
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Welcome learning
Uh,
curve.
yeah, absolutely. But I felt like I was preparing these young men for life, for their adult life. So anyway, Eric, he was from China, and we had him all 4 years.
Mm.
And Eric was just a piece of my heart. We just love that kid. And he graduated from the Christian school associated with our church. And then he went on to the University of Washington, and he graduated this year with his undergrad degree. So we were able to
Aw,
go to Seattle and see him graduate.
that must be so
Um,
rewarding.
it is, it's like when we got there, because of the pandemic, we weren't able to visit, for 3.5 years. So uh, when we got to Seattle, it was like we picked up right where we left off, almost 4 years ago. So that's, you just felt like you pour into, those young men, and it was, like I said, it's very rewarding. If you ever get a chance to do anything like that, I recommend it. But that's where we are in that. And right now we're living with my parents. We're helping them out because the physical limitations and some things going on there. But again, I see where, because we didn't have children, we were able to do this to help my parents this way. I mean, I do have a younger brother and sister, but they're not able to, with their family situation and everything, aren't able to do anything like that. So, God is preparing you the whole step away, even though you don't see it, and
Yeah.
you're like, well, why didn't I have children? Why, but
Mhm.
again, we were able to take in the international students. We were able to move. We were able to move in with my parents and help them. So I feel
Yeah.
like, looking back, you can look back, you can, armchair quarterbacking all
Yeah.
those things to where we are now. And and it's been really good because getting to be with parents in later stages of life, and it's almost, I have become the parent. The
Yeah.
roles have reversed,
Yes.
but it's been good. We get along. There are challenges, because I do work a full-time job, and so does my husband. But thankfully, the university lets us work 2 days from home. So I'm here 2 days a week so I can keep an eye on things. So that's
Mhm.
where I am right now personally.
Yeah.
I-
Well, thank you. It's good to get to know you a little bit and learn
yeah,
about your life. And that's really cool what you've
yeah,
been doing with the exchange students. So
yeah,
let's talk a little bit about your writing.
sure.
And how long ago did you start writing and
Uh,
what brought that about?
yeah. It was around 2014, I think. So it's been about 9 years ago. I've always been a voracious reader. Okay. Since I was little, I would, in our little town in New York, we had a local library. So I'd ride my bike down there, load up my basket of books, load up the books, put them in my basket and go back home. You can't do that kind of thing nowadays, but you know, back when I was growing up, that was the norm, you'd ride
Mhm.
around.
Yeah.
And I started reading. I had read Christian fiction, before. Someone handed me some Grace Livingston Hill books, when I was like 12 or 13, and I'd read those. And as I got older, I'd gotten into more like Terry Blackstock and, Susan May Warren. But, there was, and then Kindle was starting to catch on, all the, Kindle and ebooks. And so, I just thought, oh look, this is free, this is free, this is free, and I'm like, oh, this is bad, this is bad. I mean, there's a, you don't. I think it was, even though I didn't realize it, I was picking up the story structure or lack
Yeah.
thereof, or things like that. And I kept thinking, I've got story ideas of my own.
Mhm.
And I said, I think I'd like to try to write a book. But God had placed that on my heart. I'm thinking over 20 years ago to do that. And I kept saying, no, 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 I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that.
Right.
And, it was just something there. It's in the back of your mind saying, yes, you can, but I didn't know where to start, And so 2014, I Googled how to write a novel, and up pops Susan May Warren's site, Novel Academy, learn how to write a novel. And so I said, yeah, I think I'd like to enroll in that. And I told my husband, and he said, yeah, sure, go ahead. And you're thinking, oh, piece of cake, I could write something. You're like, oh no, not a piece of cake,
No, it's not.
you know, it's a long process to learn, everything you need to do from, beginning the story, to the ending, to making sure that middle doesn't sag. And that's really how I got started. And then I started, other, looking at other things, but that's where I started. I wrote my first, manuscript back in 2014, 2015 through the Novel Academy. And I look at it now, I'm going, oh, this is so bad, but I've got a good story structure. I just need to go back, and it's going to have to be completely rewritten. But now that I know, I think a little bit more what I'm doing, how to structure a novel and things like that, I'd really like to go ahead and finish these. I've got actually 3 books. It's a 3-book contemporary romance series. So, they've been put aside while I've been working on these romantic suspense books. So, but what's really interesting though, I had a story idea for this book we're going to talk about, Lethal Intentions, and I sent it to the editor at Anaya Press because they published my Christmas book, my contemporary Christmas romance. And when I sent because I'd gotten rejected, I submitted this Lethal Intentions to Harlequin's Love Inspired Suspense line, right? And they said, oh, sorry, we've already got a book like this coming out.
Oh
Yes,
man.
you know, but I was like, okay, maybe that's not so, I put out more feelers, and then I sent it to Anaya Press, and she said, we love it. Do you think maybe you can make a series? I'm like, well, yeah, sure, And then but then what the editor said in the email really kind of, I was shocked. She said, I think really romantic suspense is your genre.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, but I thought I was contemporary romance.
Mhm.
And she's like, no, no, I really think your strength is in the romantic suspense line. I'm like, okay, well, let me start. So now I'm switching gears.
Yes.
again. But that's okay, because sometimes God will open a door for you that you didn't think you were going to go through. Even though I've read like Dee Henderson, I've read, Terry Blacks, I've read Lisa Phillips, I've read all these others, that are, Lynette Eason,
Mhm.
all the big names, and you're sitting there going, oh, okay, all right, let's try this then.
Yeah.
You got to walk through the doors that are open for you, right? You don't want to say, oh no, I'm not going to do that.
Mm.
But when God opens that door, you might want to walk through it
Do you
because you never
enjoy
know.
writing do you enjoy that romantic
I
suspense writing?
I do. I really do. Because there's so much action, there's a lot of research, that goes into writing romantic suspense, because all these little details. And then when I was editing this manuscript, the second manuscript in the series this week, I said, oh, I dropped a thread.
Mm.
I dropped something. So I had to go back in and just tweak the little thing, added a little more here. I'm like, there we go.
Mm.
But there's so many moving parts, but it's, and then you have to come up with more unique ways of like, how can I get them in trouble? you know,
Yes.
than what they than even more trouble than what they're in. But so
Mhm.
that's really, what started me on this path. It's like I started here and I was like, oh no, we're going to take a detour. But
Mm.
that's okay. You just,
Mhm.
like I said, you just got to roll with things sometimes
Yeah.
and see where it takes you.
Hmm. So let's talk about your book, Lethal Intentions. Um, is it out yet or is it coming out soon?
It's out now. It's
Okay.
been out. That came out in February
Okay. All
of
right. So
2023.
let's talk a little bit about that book.
Okay.
Is it inspired at all by any true events or personal history in your life? Like, where
It
did the
is.
storyline come from?
Okay. It is. It's based off of a real life ATF agent who lost his life in the line of duty. He was undercover. He was undercover ATF agent. So my mom actually taught this guy in high school. And he was a really great guy, great Christian man, but he had risen kind of high in the bureau. So he was taking on a lot of these tougher cases. So but he passed away like 3 years ago. But
Mm.
there were just some things. He killed in the line of duty, and when because they did a profile of him here in the on the local news, and it was, I read the bio online and everything, and I'm like, something's not adding up. Of course, my little conspiracy theory mind was going, what if this
Hmm.
happened, or what if this didn't really happen, or who is behind all this kind of thing. So and then I looked, and then my mom went to the funeral because they had a big funeral at the church. I mean, his parents don't even live in the area anymore, but they brought because our church auditorium is so large. And mom said the eulogy was weird. I had someone else come up to me and say, you need to write a story about him. I'm
Mm.
like, oh, okay.
Mm.
So anyway, I wanted to give him the happily ever after he didn't get.
Mhm.
So that's where that comes from. Change the name, he was in Hawaii. I did say, well, the book is starts in Hawaii,
Okay.
but it's like it's a little bit of The Fugitive, a little bit of Hawaii Five-0, and a little bit of Magnum PI, kind of all rolled up into one. So, but I'm a big fan of like crime shows and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
and just from there, it was like, okay, the sky's the limit. What can I do with this guy? Where can I take him? What, what kind of situations can I put him in? Kind of thing. And who's after him at this point? So
Hmm.
that's where that story came from. And it
So,
just kind of rolled from there.
yeah. So, what do you hope that readers are going to take away from the story? Like when they close the last page, what do
Yeah.
you want them to say or feel?
Mhm. Um, I want them to know that God is faithful. I want them to know that because the character is a little cynical, but and he's been away. Uh, his relationship from the Lord is a little Distant. So I want them to know that, God is always there. He's faithful, and he is the God of second chances.
Mm, good. So you talked a little bit about research that has to
Mhm.
go into writing a book. How do you
Mhm.
tackle that? Like, what kind of research did you do for this
Um,
book?
um, well, I'm a part of a online group, Crime Scene Writers.
Okay.
So I asked, a few questions like, well, what kind of service weapon does an ATF agent, use? Things like that, it's kind of technical in a way, so he gave me so the guy that responded, he was an FBI agent for a while, and he said, well, most agencies use this type of gun. I'm like, okay. But it was also like, I had to do research on um what kind of crime is taking place in the Hawaiian Islands.
Mm.
um and I'm sitting there going, okay, I just hope they don't track my browser history, because it's coming up human trafficking,
Yeah.
running drugs, guns, you name it, it's going through
Mhm.
the islands,
You could
right?
get in some serious trouble.
I'm serious. I had to be very, very careful. So, just things like that. I had to do a friend of mine. She had visited the Hawaiian Islands multiple times. They were even thinking of moving there. So I asked her about local customs, local foods, the weather, certain times a year, what's the weather like? I even, of course, you can Google all that, but I wanted somebody's perspective, and I
Mhm.
want to know, what kind of food did you like when you visited there? So she gave me some ideas for that, for those kinds of things, because I want to incorporate a lot of that. Um, the terrain, is so different parts of the island, things like that. There's usually an active volcano.
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
just a lot of stuff like that, which was a lot of it was very interesting too.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what to put in the book. There's so much information that doesn't go in.
Yeah. So there's a lot of authors I know who take a real location, but then
Mhm.
they create a fictional
Mhm.
town or whatever. Is yours a real location, one of the real islands in Hawaii?
Yes,
Which
it is. It's the big island of Hawaii. So I started there, and I looked at pictures. There's the famous, well, I talked about Hilo Airport. I talked about, but I don't give a whole lot of specifics, but I'm just like, okay, this is what's here. You can give specifics like, okay, they went to the Hilo Airport, the this what was it, the southeast corner of the island, it's very rocky, so there was a bungalow. She said, oh, there, you could do a bungalow overlooking, the lagoon or the bay there. I said, oh, that's a really good idea,
Mhm.
but a lot of the majority of the locations, um for my contemporary romance, I make a fictional town, but for this I used real towns. I like they had to fly into LAX, they had to go here, they had to go here. So yeah, I really didn't stay a whole lot on the terrain. It was very character driven and situation driven, like, oh no, we're stuck, or we're being chased, or I've got a flat tire, or something like that.
So how long did it take you to write the book?
Uh, let's see. Hmm, Maybe about 6 months, I think, between doing research, and I also do an in-depth character study for both my hero and heroine. I'll take the love language, the 5 love languages quiz for both of them. I'll do a very in-depth character analysis. I'll take Myers-Briggs test as if I was the character,
Okay.
that kind of thing. And then I'll check out the Enneagram, so
Mhm.
I use multiple resources. So I have a good picture. I just don't want them to be cookie cutter characters. I want them to be three-dimensional. They have their fears, their likes, their dislikes,
Mhm.
have to create that whole backstory still,
Right.
for both your characters.
Mhm. So do you have a favorite quote from the book?
Um,
Can
Probably it's the first line. It took me a long time to get to this first. Usually, Even Susan May Warren says majority of the time she doesn't have the first line. It's not until after you finish the book that you get the
You
first
go
line.
back and add it.
And I'm sitting there and I wrote the first line. I wrote the first line. I'm like, man, this isn't working. Finally, it's like it's like a light bulb moment sometimes. My favorite quote is undercover ATF agent Jack Spencer lived by one hard and fast rule: don't get involved, no exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, he's a loner. From that, you can tell he's a loner. He doesn't get involved with people. His emotions, he's shut down,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that kind of sets the tone. And then, the hero, when, as he goes through, he realizes he does need help. He cannot do this all on his own. And that's where, his dependence on God and on Maggie, the heroine, comes in.
Mm. So anything you want to tell us about the story itself before we wrap up?
Well, sure. It's fast-paced, romantic suspense. I'm a little bit heavier on some of the romance than some of the other romantic suspense authors, but I feel like I've got a good balance between it. Maggie, the heroine, is an ex-army medic, and she's got some PTSD issues she's dealing with. So she's got that. He becomes injured. So now, as a result of his injury, she has to help him. She doesn't want to. She's an unwitting, helper at the beginning, and then as they're going along, she's like, well, this guy can't do it on his own. He's going to need help. So if you like fast-paced romantic suspense, if you like, a swoony hero, then this book's for you,
This
I
book is
guess.
for you. That's right. So what do you have coming up next?
Right. My next book, Lethal Pursuit, it will be released October 10th. I just finished up second round of edits for that. Hopefully that's the last round of edits. It's Jack Spencer's friend, Hawk, who's an FBI agent who helps him out in book one. So he makes a reappearance. Some of the other I've got two characters that make cameo, that make a reappearance, but they're not the main characters. So it's going to be Mark Hawkins, aka Hawk, who's the FBI agent who helps Jack in the first book. He gets his story. In the second book, FBI agent, he's because Charlotte is I guess notorious for a lot of bank robberies and counterfeiting. We
Okay.
have a lot of counterfeiting. So there's an FBI field office in Charlotte just handles that. So that's where I got that story idea for that. And then we bring in Maggie's friend Heather, who's going to be the heroine. So Mark and Heather know each other from a while back, but that's where that one is. And then we go back to Hawaii. We start off in my fictional town of Providence, North Carolina, and then we head back to Hawaii. He's pursuing. That's where I got it. Lethal Pursuit. He's pursuing the counterfeiters and the cartel back to Hawaii.
Nice.
Oh,
It sounds like perfect romantic suspense.
yes.
I love suspense. It's one of my favorite genres to read. Maybe one day I might try to write one, but I'm
Yeah.
still trying to find my way with the whole writing thing and still
Oh,
learning a lot. And like, I don't
yes.
want to tackle that.
It is a learning curve, whatever genre. It's a definite learning curve, and
Yes.
there's no shame in saying I don't know,
Mhm.
or I need to go back and do this, or take another course, or
Yeah.
read something, and I'm always trying to learn something new.
Mhm.
There's a Spark Flash Fiction. They're doing how to write, just a little 1 day webinar. I said,
Mhm.
ooh, I'd like to learn how to write that. And it'll actually help you tighten your writing too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm like, well, I'll just sign up for that. It was really inexpensive. And I'm like, why not? Why
Hmm.
not? Because Betsy St. Amant is going to be teaching that.
Okay.
So I'm just like, sure, anything to, hone your craft
Hmm.
and just get better. I look at my first book and I look at book 2 and 3 in this series. And I'm like, wow, I've come a long way. Just from that first Christmas romance that I wrote up to now, even up to now, I'm like, my writing has really changed, but in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. We never stop learning. Just
Absolutely never.
keep growing, and
Yeah.
and things are always changing too. So
Right.
you got to
Exactly.
keep on top of whatever the new
Yep.
thing is.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, our time has slipped away from us, but I appreciate again you joining me here to talk about your writing and your book, and sharing a giveaway with the people who comment on this interview during this week that it's posted up. So I appreciate it, and it's been a
Sure. Thank
pleasure.
you.
I've known you online, and
Yes.
I hosted you on another interview, a written interview, but this is the
Right.
first time we have actually gotten to kind of meet face to face and talk.
Right.
So
Right.
it's been a pleasure to actually meet you.
Yes. You too.
All right. Well, you take care, and I'll be
Thank you.
seeing you online and in your books.
Okay. Thank you, Dina.
All
All
right.
right. Bye bye.